following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Good morning, everybody. It's a big day tomorrow. Scott Fishbowl will open up this week. So in honor of that, we're going to talk about roster construction and our favorite formats and scoring formats for fantasy football today here on Belly Up Fantasy Live. We'll also talk about some NFL headlines. We'll talk about a possible Matthew Stafford trade that was rumored in the preseason that we didn't hear about. Dalvin Cook, DeAndre Hopkins, Mark Ingram, and more. We'll talk about all that coming up right now on Belly Up Fantasy Live.
Jalen Reagor getting traded to Minnesota changes nothing.
6'4" guys running 4.4s. These guys don't grow on trees. And a lot of times I'm willing to bet on, especially long term, on the freak athlete.
You don't ever want to overreact to what guys look like in preseason. There's been a ton of preseason all-stars that never make rosters or never pan out. Game time. Let's hit it. All right. Good morning, everybody. I am Chase Thornton coming to you as always from the Mott and Bailey Basement Bar, and this is Belly Up Fantasy Live. Like we said, big week with Scott Fishbowl kicking off. So we're going to talk about our favorite things about roster construction, our favorite formats, our favorite draft formats, things like that. But, first we'll touch on some NFL headlines here, and I am not alone to talk about NFL headlines. We have, as always, coming in, our good friend Kevin Wilson. How we doing today, Kevin?
We're doing good, and I was going to wash the car yesterday. Did not,
Okay.
Fortunately enough, and it was dark, rainy this morning, so even though I didn't do it, mission successful.
Right.
So we are happy
Just
here.
put
and
it out into the
temperature-
universe and it'll happen. Yeah.
That's right. So the temperatures have come down here in the Dallas area, so we are happy and glad to be here as always.
Yeah, it's been beautiful up here. We had a little bit of storms on the 4th. Actually, on the 4th of July, it stormed a little bit early in the day, but then it held off enough at night that everybody was able to do fireworks and everything like that. It was beautiful yesterday. My little guys, you and I were talking in the pregame here. My 4 and my 5-year-old, they both have brand new bikes, and they've been doing that for a week. They had a little bit of a rough day yesterday with that, but when you're talking about little guys trying to learn how to ride bikes, that's an omelet that you have to break a few eggs to make.
That's right. More than a few usually.
Yeah, we're not. And luckily they've got a doctor for a mom who knows just how to, as if all moms aren't doctors, but
That's right.
they have a literal doctor for a mom. So
That's
she knows
right.
how to
Mom,
take care of all the
MD.
bumps and bruises. So we're all good here on our end of things as well. But like we said, we got a lot to talk about this morning for news and for fun. So I'm going to pop my first one here. I'm going with a mocha frappe milk stout this morning. Again, kind of my morning coffee, but
Okay. And I have discovered from previous shows Mike's Harder Strawberry. There it is.
There you have it.
Okay. And so I have decided that's pretty much the drink of choice during the show.
That's going to be
Since,
the on-air
since
vehicle.
Bud Light has pretty much disappeared from the face of the planet. And so, Mike steps up, and here we go.
So, speaking of that, this is a little bit of a diversion, but I guess it fits with what we do here. Bud Light has gone because of all the controversy, and I'm not going to moralize on what anybody should or shouldn't think about that whole controversy with
Right.
what's going on with Bud Light, but they have gone from the top selling beer in America now, top selling brand. They fell off that perch for the first time in decades.
Right. Yeah, they're not even on the top 10.
And now Modelo
Modelo.
is, and
Okay.
to me, that's just a complete shock.
Yes.
I like Modelo. I don't
Yeah.
mind Modelo at all, but for it to be the top selling brand in the whole country, it seems like it would be I don't know. I mean, good on them, I guess, but I don't see near the advertising for them that anybody else has.
I
that
couldn't tell you the
anybody
last
else
time I
has.
saw any advertising for them.
I mean, I'm talking like I don't see stadium advertising for them. I don't see in-game advertising for them a whole lot. I mean, a lot of the other big nationwide brand, Coors and Miller Lite and some of those, you obviously pop up everywhere. But yeah, I don't see Modelo everywhere, and it doesn't have like giant displays at any of our stores. So maybe, I mean,
No.
hey, maybe it's the one place in the entire world where, you know, advertising doesn't outweigh the quality. I guess, who knows?
I guess so. So, you know, capitalism speaks. So there you have it.
Right. That was that would be like you telling me that somehow RC Cola like passed up Coke
Which
for
I like RC, by the way.
and I do too, but like
yeah. So
the giant juggernaut versus one that you kind of think of occasionally.
I couldn't remember the last time I actually had an RC.
Right.
To be quite honest about that too, but I it'll happen today.
Hear about it more in country songs.
I was just informed it'll happen today.
There you have it. All right. way to jump on things. All right. So yeah, let's talk on some NFL headlines here. There's some interesting stuff going on right now, and I mean, you know, it's a low season, it's a dead season for them. I mean, there's not the flurry of signings.
This is about the deadest I could ever remember NFL news being. I know it's training camps and all that haven't started, but it's you got to check for a pulse right now.
We're past all the OTAs. We're not in a training camp yet. The signings have all happened or that are going to happen, you know, in terms of the flurry of the big wave, the shark attack of signings. There's still guys we're waiting on like every year, but I mean, yeah, there's not a whole lot going on like that way, but there's been some interesting like rumor stuff happening here. So the first thing I want to talk about real quick, Justin Ross, a name that maybe not a lot of people, especially in redraft, maybe think about. Justin Ross, wide receiver.
If you're a Clemson fan, you certainly know who he is.
If you're a Clemson fan, you know Justin Ross's name. Signed as an undrafted free agent last year by the Chiefs, fell out of the draft process because of some lingering foot injury issues, among others. But when he signed with the Chiefs, a lot of people were like, "Oh, that's a steal, man," because he's got a lot of talent. He's a very good receiver. And then they didn't have to spend a draft pick on him. Now, he ended up spending the entire season last year on IR, a whole 2022 season on IR, so he never saw the field. We don't know what we really have out of him yet in terms of an NFL player, but he got a lot of praise from Patrick Mahomes here in OTAs here earlier this year. And so I'm wondering, okay, I actually have a little bit of exposure to him in some of my dynasty leagues because I had enough roster spots that I was able to and because he fell so far, I was either taking me with a 4th round pick, a last like pick of the draft kind of thing, or grab him as like the Chiefs did, an undrafted guy, a free agent. Justin Ross on a team like the Chiefs that we know is going to be one of the most high-powered passing offenses in the whole game. He's got Patrick Mahomes throwing to him. Apparently Patrick Mahomes likes him, or at least is putting that out there that he likes him. Do you see Justin Ross as a guy worth taking a flyer on?
Absolutely, I see that. And as you mentioned, right now, if he's not on a team, he's out there floating around. And so there's no downside.
Right.
Zero. And so if you go ahead and you claim him, get him on your team, and you could do, if you've got room on your taxi squad, you can put him over there for the time being. And so it doesn't affect your roster one bit. And then if it does turn out to be so that Patrick Mahomes does throw his way, then you've got a potential game winner.
The Chiefs' offense is an offense that we know we want a piece of it. The only frustrating thing about it is that now with Tyreek Hill out of the picture, outside of Travis Kelce, we have no idea.
That's right.
Who their like top guy is going to be. You know,
so we could say that about the whole lot of their wide receivers.
Oh, big time,
especially in Dynasty. Everyone else is on a roster some way, somehow. You got to think Tony, right? All those guys.
Sky Moore,
If
MVS.
you picked him and you dropped him, then you probably shouldn't even be playing. But
right.
But he was a disappointment, obviously. But any of those guys could step up and be the man with Patrick Mahomes. And if you're the man with Patrick Mahomes, you're the man.
Right. Like we said, it's an offense you want a piece of. And I mean, McCole Hardman, who was their longest termed wideout, he's gone now. And he's in New York. Juju Smith-Schuster, who was their leading wide receiver last year, is now in New England. He's
Such as it
gone.
was.
MVS is we know what we're going to get out of Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I've said it before as a Packer fan. You know my thoughts on him.
All right. I don't want him.
No, I don't.
Out of
I don't
wide
necessarily
receivers
either.
on Kansas City. He's the one I don't want.
But he's there, and he's
there.
got deep threat ability, but he's not by any means a replacement for.
No,
he's basically McCole Hardman, what they've already had, a guy that you can toss it too deep a couple times a game, and maybe he catches it, maybe he doesn't. Kadarius Toney, we know, has a ton of talent. He's an exciting electric player.
Healthy.
If he just can get healthy, but Sky Moore didn't get a lot of run last year.
If you picked him up, I would be pretty hip on what he might do this year.
A lot of people are pretty high on Sky Moore. People are high on Kadarius Toney because we know about the talent. We're just, can he stay healthy? But the point is that there is an opening for a guy to step up. And if Justin Ross is healthy, and if he can establish that connection with Patrick Mahomes, we've seen him in his football career be a very talented wide receiver. There's an opening there. And like we just said, you can get him for basically free. I agree. I mean, I'm not tossing anything important at him, but yeah, if you've got room and you want to take a flyer on him with your next to last or your second to last pick or whatever, if you want to, toss a fourth round, or if he's on waivers, even he may even be on waivers in your dynasty league, depending on how deep your league is.
That's a significant possibility that he's on waivers.
Toss a fourth rounder at whoever's got him if you feel like it. I mean, yeah, he's basically free right now. Go out, take a shot.
No, in redraft, I'm not taking a shot on him in redraft.
Okay.
Right? Because you got to figure when you get all said and done, he's going to be still floating out there. So
you may actually be able to get him. One of the things you could do if you wanted to pick him up for free that way and not spend your draft pick, I mean, it's essentially like spending a draft pick on him when you come down to it. But if your league mandates that you leave the draft with a kicker and a defense, 5 minutes after the draft gets done, while everybody else is wrapping up their, laptop cords and everything, drop your kicker, go grab Justin Ross, put him on your roster. You can grab a kicker 15 minutes before opening day if you want. Nobody's going to care. It's kicker. And we'll talk about that later. So, okay, that's Justin Ross. Matthew Stafford, I brought it up now. A rumor came out. Michael Lombardi was on a Pat McAfee show, and he said that the Rams had been trying to trade Matthew Stafford right before they had to give him a roster bonus at the beginning of the league year. Right before the league year started, they were trying to maybe trade him and get rid of him. Didn't find any takers. So then they came out and said, oh, yeah, no, we're excited to have Matthew Stafford back and everything. He won him a Super Bowl.
He did.
But we know that he had a terrible injury, plagued season last year. He only played 9 games, but he's got a $49.5 million cap hit next season. Obviously, he's not your long-term quarterback the same way that Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, maybe Justin or Jared Goff, the guy they got rid of. He may not be
Jared
as long
Goff
for the world as that.
Much more upside.
And he's got more length to his career. I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
What do you make of this idea with the Matthew Stafford trade? Does it give you pause at all in any of your considerings for him this season? B, does it make you take a second look now at Stetson Bennett as a draft pick this season, even though he's a late draft pick for them, a guy who's a little bit older of a prospect and has, I guess supposedly looked, pretty good for them so far in preseason OTAs. What's your thoughts there on the Rams quarterback situation?
Well, as you'll remember, I've talked about Stetson Bennett on this very show in the past. And even though he's, almost, close to retirement age, he still has, coming from where he came from and he's a champion. And so he's got a maturity force about him. When you're almost getting ready to retire, you should have some
He's got some
maturity.
swagger too.
He's got some swagger. That's a requirement when you come from Georgia. And so, as I went ahead and I drafted him in my rookie, because everybody wants to go draft rookies when you're in a dynasty league 10 minutes after the draft is over and all that. But I took him with my last rookie pick.
Yep.
And so, because even before any rumors, you could tell that quarterback room was not long for Matthew Stafford.
Right.
So
the facts are the facts. He's getting older and he's had some injury problems here now.
He's been around since 2008 or whatever year it was that he was drafted.
Yeah,
so
just after color television, I think.
That's right. The last, dinosaurs, took their last step on the earth, and then here comes Matthew Stafford right after that. But anyway, so he's not long for. If you've got him in your dynasty, you've almost got to hold on to him.
Yeah,
you
might be able to trade him, but it depends on your situation.
Right, and so any kind of rumor doesn't really affect any way that I would approach Matthew Stafford at all.
I don't have Stafford. I don't have Stafford on my radar so much in short term. He might be a DFS play for me depending on matchups this year. From week to week, but he's not on my redraft radar necessarily.
Playing Arizona, you might want to tab something like that.
If you're in a super flex format, if you're in a 2 quarterback format, I think he's fine as your number 2.
Yeah.
So if you're in dynasty, like you said, my dynasty leagues are all super flex. So if I have him as a quarterback 2, I'm thrilled with that. If whether it is or not, I probably am looking to trade him in dynasty while he's still old enough, while he's still playing, but he's old enough that I'm comfortable moving on from him if I can. I agree with you completely. Stetson Bennett is a guy that, especially if I've got extra 4th round picks, he's a guy that I'm looking to grab late in drafts just to kind of keep on my roster. It's a super flex format. Quarterbacks are like gold.
That's
so
right.
Yeah. But I think it definitely makes me take a second look at him. Moving on then, Dalvin Cook. You and I talked about him again. We've talked about him kind of ad nauseum this offseason because he's been about the biggest name that's still out there unsigned. He and DeAndre Hopkins. Cook is still not signed. It comes out this week that, he has that standing offer from the Dolphins, but apparently he's not happy with it. Now, their top competition for him appears to be in division between the Jets and the Patriots, which is awkward. There's been a little bit of talk that possibly out west.
Either one of them. I don't buy it.
No, the Patriots, it doesn't seem like a Patriot kind of move.
No, they've got Stevenson already.
And the Jets have Breece Hall. They have Michael Carter, who we know is good. They just drafted Israel Abanikanda. They've got a stable enough that they don't, obviously they're going for all in with the Rodgers deal and everything, but I don't think he fits in New York. I don't like New York as a landing spot for him.
Buffalo, like I've been saying almost from the very start.
But he's not happy with the Dolphins offer, even though the Dolphins are the place that he's been rumored to want to go and have wanted him the most, regardless of the fact that they have 876 tailbacks.
Right. Which we bring up every single week. They need an SUV to bring all
right.
Maybe not even
clown car.
A clown car. All right. They definitely need something to bring all their wide receivers and equipment, because otherwise someone's going to get left in the cold.
Their 4th and 5th tailbacks right now have been fantasy relevant guys in the past, Salvon Ahmed and Myles Gaskin. It's an embarrassment of riches. It's a nice problem to have if you're Mike McDaniel. But does this make you waver from the idea that you still think Dalvin Cook ends up in Miami, or do you think that he does look?
I still think he winds up in Miami, even though I'm not. I have not, and continue to not be happy with that. But
all right,
just because, as we mentioned, 7,000 running backs plus one. Okay,
is he what? Where do you? Wherever he signs, whenever he signs, where do you see Dalvin Cook as a draftable asset?
Okay, so this I have a definitive answer. of.
Yep. No, because I
Okay.
knew you had this, so I wanted.
I had a definitive answer
I want to hear this
because,
take.
right, and I'm sure I'm like millions of people that are watching us right now involved in mock drafts. All right. And I've been doing that, and I did one last night. It was a 10-man PPR redraft.
Excellent.
And okay, and so in the eighth round, I had the number 9 pick. Eighth round comes around. Who's sitting there? None other than Dalvin Cook. So in a 12-man league, that's the 7th round. There is no downside in taking Dalvin Cook in the 7th or 8th round in redraft as your number 3 running back. There's no downside to that. And if he doesn't work, you know,
by the time you get to 7th, 8th round, you've probably got several receivers, several running backs. You may even have your quarterback. You might have your tight end if you took the right guy.
Right.
So yeah, you're taking him lower. You're not taking him with the expectation of him having to be one of your top guns necessarily.
Right. And he is a guy who is certainly capable of being an RB1.
If he falls that way.
Yeah. So if you're in your redraft league and he's there in the 7th or 8th round, do not, regardless of his situation, signed, unsigned, whatever, draft him.
Yeah.
No questions asked.
Yeah, don't pass him up that way.
And you're going to be happy. How could you not be happy with Dalvin Cook as a 8th or 7th round draft?
Yeah, as like you just said,
as your number 3 running back.
You're talking about a guy who was, I mean, he's only a couple of years removed from being the top overall player. He was a top 11. He was a number 1 running back last season. Played all 17 games,
right.
I mean, most of all 17 games for the first time in forever. We know that can be a little injury prone, and he's getting up. But he's only
right. Which years old. Factor that in. But
he's 20. He's not 30. He's 27.
That's right. And so he has not been, Ezekiel Elliott's out there. He has not been hit nearly as many times as him. So
he's been more efficient than Leonard Fournette.
Yep. No downside.
Jump on him. Yep. If he's there at the 7th, 8th round
all day long,
I agree.
And if you follow our advice and it's August in your drafting,
you'll have a better idea of where he's going to be. Probably.
Yeah, wherever he is, once he signs, then I imagine that 7th, 8th
once
round,
he signs up, his ADP should rise.
He won't be there in the 7th, 8th round anymore.
Right now, he's kind of out of sight, out of mind for people. Once he signs,
it'll move up. And still, but if you're taking even a 5th round or so,
right?
How can you pass on him?
If you're taking Dalvin Cook as not your RB1,
that's right.
That's
if you're taking him as your
RB1,
then we might need to discuss that.
That's a risk. That's a risk I'm willing to, especially in like a best ball format. If
yes.
you can grab Dalvin Cook because you don't have to worry about week to week what he's playing.
Heck, you can take him and Madison and be okay.
Hey, yeah, and unlike previous years when you were if you were taking both of them and you were covering your own ass.
That's right.
This year you get the best of both worlds because you get them both.
You can have them both in your lineup at the same time.
All right. So moving on. Last one we'll talk about here real quick before we hit a commercial break. But Greg Dulcich.
Okay.
Darling of the tight end draft last season. Landed in Denver with Russell Wilson, who has not necessarily been historically kind to tight ends. But comes out this week. Now they have a new head coach this year. They moved on.
Not just a head coach.
Thankfully, they moved on from Nathaniel Hackett.
The head coach.
Sean Payton is there now, and he said in an interview here recently that Dulcich was going to play. He's got Dulcich slated to play what he calls the Joker role in his offense here in Denver. Now, for those who aren't necessarily familiar with the Joker role in Sean Payton's offense, let me throw a couple of names out here who have played the Joker role in his offense before. Reggie Bush, Darren Sproles, Alvin Kamara are 3 of the names that have played this Joker role for Sean Payton's offense in the past. Darren Sproles' entire fantasy relevancy was because he played this role. Darren Sproles is about my height, which if you guys, if anybody is going to head to the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton in August. You meet me there. Trust me, you're probably taller than I am. Darren Sproles is not a big guy, but his entire fantasy relevancy pretty much was because he could play this joker role in Sean Payton's offense. Alvin Kamara has made his top 10 fantasy running back career out of playing this joker role.
That's
Now,
right.
I find it interesting. You got 3 running back names there that I just named off. Dulcich comes in as a tight end, but he's not necessarily known as like a giant blocker or anything. So this may play to his skill set really well. Then you factor in the idea too that as at straight tight end, they have Chris Manhertz, they have Alberto Queguenum, who was a highly touted player until he didn't play much last year. And is that Hackett's fault or Alberto's fault? Who knows? But they also then just brought in Adam Troutman, who has played for Sean Payton and played tight end before. So you want to talk about a blocker. This is a guy who has experience in Sean Payton's system at the tight end position, which would free up Dulcich to not have to be the starting tight end.
Right.
What do you make of this news? Was Dulcich on your tight end radar to begin with? And now B, knowing that he may be slotted for this joker role, this Alvin Kamara type role, hybrid running back, wide receiver or type role, does that raise him in your estimations here for redraft purposes or else?
Well, I'd have to say that first of all, no, he was not on my tight end anywhere on my landscape. And if someone's gonna mold a career, seems like Sean Payton would be the guy that you'd want to here I am, do what you're gonna do.
There you go.
So with this news, yes, absolutely, Dulcich does come up into your thought process, and especially at the tight end position, as we all know, tight ends kind of like
it's
catchers.
it's a
fantasy
dart in the dark
baseball.
after Travis Kelce.
It's a necessary evil, and you have to have one. And you'd probably rather smash your face into your windshield while you're driving down the street than have a tight end on your team. But it's still part of football. But you need to have one.
Got to do it.
Right. And if you're in a league that doesn't have it, I'm not going to be a part of that league. But anyway, yes, Dulcich will have, and I'm kind of low of having 2 tight ends on my team.
Right.
But if you were inclined to do that, then I think that Dulcich definitely.
If you could come away from your draft with say like a George Kittle or a Dallas Goedert type,
yes,
where you don't have to spend Travis Kelce type, you don't have to spend Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews type capital on them.
Yeah, if you've got Travis Kelce, then forget.
But if you've got one of these other guys, like I said, you've got a Goddard type or a even a Pitts type, because we still don't know what we have in Pitts with his quarterback situation. But if you've got them, but Dulcich ends up playing this joker role, he may be fantasy relevant outside of the idea of being a tight end, and he may actually be usable as a flex option type if he is successful in the same type of role that Alvin Kamara, Darren Sproles, Reggie Bush have played before. He was a guy that was already, because of his athleticism, was already on my kind of sleeper tight end radar. This news firmly plants him in the
absolutely, because if it wasn't for this news, we wouldn't be talking about him, period.
I like the idea of him right now. This has been a popular mode of operation in the past to wait on, if you don't get Kelce, if you don't get Andrews, you don't get one of the big names there.
Yeah.
Wait.
Absolutely.
This is the kind of guy to take a dart throw at late.
Absolutely.
If you're going to end up streaming the position anyway, take this guy with your draft pick, and you may not have to. You may end up lucky and not having a stream.
That's right. You could use a last round pick, and you want to go ahead and draft a defense. They say don't draft a defense till the second to last round,
till the very ass end. Yep.
Yeah. But if you use this philosophy, maybe you could move up your, and go after a kicker.
Yeah, take somebody else. Yeah, you can grab Justin Tucker
over there, somebody like that. Yep. And so And then last pick, Greg Dolchitz, and then go and sit down and just wait and see what
Feel
happens.
good about things. All right.
Yep.
Let's grab our first ad spot here. We come back on the other side. We'll talk about it. We got a couple more headlines I just want to touch on real quick, but then we're gonna move on to our roster construction conversation here real quick. First, let's hear from our good friends here at Manscaped.
Spring has sprung, and our friends at Manscaped have the best tools for some spring cleaning. They've already helped you tidy up all the nooks and crannies of your body's basement. But this year, Manscaped can help you get the perfect presentation on that beautiful face with the new Beard Hedger Pro Kit. Make sure you look your best this spring by using code BELLY20 to get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. So tame your mane with the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. The sun is peeking back out, which means you'll have to show your face in the daylight again. So use the kit to make sure your scruff looks award-winning, whether you have glorious beard flow or some smooth, sleek cheeks. Save 20% off and free shipping with the code BELLY20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code BELLY20 at manscaped.com. Focus on the face and use the Beard Hedger Pro Kit for the cleanest look in the game.
Once again, that's a newer code for us, BELLY20.
That's right.
BELLY20 to get over there to manscaped.com. Get that deal on some great products. Again, I have them. I use them. It's coming along nicely here, top and bottom, but we won't talk about all of that.
Yep. I know.
All right.
Appreciate Manscaped. All right. So
Right. Yeah. They've got if you've got a hair, they've got a product for it. They've got a weed trimmer for it. So get over there, use that code, and enjoy yourself. All right. We brought up DeAndre Hopkins earlier, still not signed, but DeAndre Hopkins now says, hey, he thinks he can play for a while yet. He says he wants to play until he's no longer a 1,000-yard receiver. Now he is 31. He has dealt with some injuries here, and he has dealt with some suspensions here in the past couple of years, which means one, that, okay, well, can you rely on him for an entire season? But B, it also means that he hasn't necessarily taken as many hits in the last couple of years, so he may not necessarily be a full 31. He has not signed anywhere yet. We don't know where he's going to sign. It might be New England. It might be somewhere else. He claims it's not about the money, but it's also about the money, so we don't know.
If it wasn't about the money, he'd be signed.
He'd be somewhere, or he'd probably be in New England already, yeah. Or he'd be a free flyer for Kansas City or somewhere where you can win right away. But DeAndre Hopkins, what do you make of this? I mean, are you excited at all about him this year? Redraft wise, are you excited about him if he's on your dynasty roster? Are you worried about the situation that he hasn't signed yet? What do you make of DeAndre Hopkins' situation real quick here?
Well, when we first talked about him, what, about 5 weeks ago now? Something like that. And
yeah,
I thought,
month or two.
yeah, or so. I thought for sure he was on his way to Kansas City. And I thought I said, hey, he's in his car on the way to Kansas City right now. Well, apparently it broke down. And
for those of us without DeAndre Hopkins' current bank account, it seems like a no-brainer to go somewhere like that or Buffalo, where you're going to win right away.
Right. And that helps your bank account more. And you go.
You're not going to play for free,
right? You win, right? That breeds more money, you would think. But so he is not signed, and if he's on my fantasy or dynasty team, I'm a little concerned at this point. You got to hold, see, because unless somebody comes and blows your doors off with an offer, I don't see that happening. So. And in redraft, if
you try to sell him now in dynasty, you're probably getting back less than his
you might
value.
want to check, make sure you check your change when you get,
right.
There might be some Canadian nickels in there or something like that.
You're getting back less than value right now.
That's right. So, you're holding redraft. Unlike Dalvin Cook, who I just mentioned, I'm not taking DeAndre Hopkins this year unless he falls real far in the draft. And so I'm surprised, really, that he is he's not signed. But after I realized that he wasn't going to Kansas City and he wasn't going to Buffalo, and that 3 priorities that he mentioned, as we talked about, throw those completely, utterly out the back door because they don't mean anything.
He's he's a guy that in like in a best ball format, if he falls to the right spot, I would love to take him so I don't have to worry about having to start him all the time. He's still DeAndre Hopkins. He's still Nook. The nice thing about him, like I said, he hasn't taken as many hits the last couple of years because he's been out. His game isn't based on speed the same way that some other guys is. He's not necessarily a tactical route runner. I mean, there's a reason that the joke was always Kyler would say, F it, Nook's down there somewhere and throw it to the left, right? Because he knew he could catch
all of us have
balls.
Seen that play in the end zone where he went up and grabbed the touchdown.
He's a strong
that's his
receiver.
game in a nutshell right there.
He's still a strong receiver. He still doesn't have to be open to be open. But yeah, I mean, I don't want him real high. But again, it's still DeAndre Hopkins. If he falls to the right spot, you kind of have to jump on that. Some news that the Panthers are going to use Miles Sanders as a 3-down back. Their plans are to use him as a 3-down back, which we've seen in the past when Miles Sanders has been used as a receiver. He can score some points for you in fantasy. Now, obviously, the Carolina Panthers offense is we'll say slight downgrade from the Philadelphia Eagles offense. But if they're going to
that's being generous.
The calculus with him quite a bit there. Where are you seeing Miles Sanders right now in your running back hierarchy?
I think that you have to consider him up on the upswing right now.
Okay.
And the only thing that could possibly hold him back is the rookie quarterback. And so, but other than that, as we've talked about, we like the offense that they are putting around him, which Sanders is a part of that, of course. Their wide receivers and everything. And the only thing that could possibly give you pause, I think, the rookie quarterback, and then will you stay healthy the whole season?
Right.
And so, but I could see, and it's not even a dart throw really, because if darts, he'll be gone by before you start using darts in your draft.
Right.
Yeah. But so I could certainly see using a draft selection on him, given this information that he's going to be a 3-down back. So you've got the run now, you've got the pass that he's going to be catching. So I'm much more inclined to take him now with this news than I would have been previously.
He's a guy that I like as a 3-down back. I think that the rookie quarterback doesn't necessarily affect that as much, knowing that he'll be a 3-down back and he doesn't have to come off on passing downs. I don't think this is a team that's going to be winning every week. I think that they're going to have to throw the ball, but with a rookie quarterback, he may be more inclined to check down. And
That's
who
right.
are your hot reads generally?
Yep, the check downs. Yep.
You're going to be using your tight end as a hot read a lot. You're going to be using your back as a hot read a lot, and your back, if it's Miles Sanders and you've got Miles Sanders now, hey, let's go. Let's use him. I like, if you can get Miles Sanders, I'm content with him as my RB2. I am very content with him as my RB2 if I can pick him up in a draft. And then real quick, the last one I want to talk about here. Darius Slayton says, I'm a number 1 wide receiver in this league. Darius Slayton thinks he's a number 1 wide receiver. Now, this is another team on a different level, but with the same kind of thing that Kansas City's dealing with. We don't necessarily know who their number 1 guy is right now. They've got Isaiah Hodgins. They've got Darius Slayton. They've got Paris Campbell, who they brought in this offseason. They just drafted Jalen Hyatt. They have Wan'Dale Robinson, who they've barely been able to get on the field because of injuries. They have Sterling Shepard, who missed almost all of last year with injury. They signed Jamison Crowder. They still have David Sills, the 5th from last year. They even have Khalil Pimpleton, who was a big-time star coming out of the Detroit Lions HBO Hard Knocks season. They've got, like I've said in the past, they've got 246 different slot type receivers. Now, Slayton is a guy that did look okay last year. He led New York in targets last year. He led them in yardage last season, but he didn't lead them in touchdowns. That was Isaiah Hodgins, who kind of came on out of nowhere to be actually the second half of the season, their lead receiver, Isaiah Hodgins, who is back. Shepard, in the 3 or 4 games he played before he went down for the season, actually was their leader in yards in points per game, fantasy points per game. And then Richie James, who is now one of those Kansas City Chief, fruit basket upset guys, led them in overall fantasy points. But Darius Slayton, we don't know who's going to emerge from this passing offense here. We know I'm a big Daniel Jones guy. I've been a big Daniel Jones guy, but they also brought in Darren Waller now. Is there a receiver on this team that you want a part of? And is it Darius Slayton?
Well, you better be pretty good, even excellent, at making prophecies, because other than that, you don't know who is going to emerge
right.
from all of this, right? And Slayton, you gotta like the confidence. You gotta like that. If he was saying anything other than that, you got to be concerned, I think. But
gotta like the swagger.
Yeah. I unless it's real late in the draft, I don't want any part of the New York wide receivers.
Yeah, I'm not excited about the Giants wide receivers necessarily, but to Slayton's credit, he was maybe their most consistent guy from the beginning to the end of the year. Second half of the season, like we said, Isaiah Hodgins emerged. I think I like Isaiah Hodgins, but I don't like any of these guys on this roster as more than like my wide receiver 4.
Right. And if any of these guys slide and don't get drafted, you definitely want to keep an eye on them.
Put them on your watch list, yes.
Someone's going to emerge.
Oh, yeah.
And then when that happens, go ahead and get the claim in. But as sitting here trying to predict who, other than Waller, is going to be catching the most passes in the New York Giants offense, I like how they kind of complement each other.
Right.
But there's no clear number one. I don't care what Slate says.
I'll say this. I'm still working on my rankings for next season. I'm still working on getting those all compiled to release. But I like Shepard if he's fully healthy. I like Shepard as a lower level, as a lower like dart throw. Slayton was fairly consistent for them last year. I think he ends up being one of their 2 outside guys. I think he does end up being a starter on this team. Which we know and we saw last year. He can do some things with it. I think Hodgins ends up being the other guy.
It's not the same as being a starter, let's say, for like Minnesota Vikings.
No.
Okay.
No. So I'm not excited about any of these guys. I like Shepard as like a kind of a, if he's fully healthy, and we'll see in preseason here. If Shepard's healthy, I like him kind of as a steady guy. I like Slayton as a steady guy, but neither one of them is going to be real high on your list.
If you want to talk some dart throws, this is the definition.
This entire receiver collection is a dart board,
right? Better be looking over their shoulder because there might be darts coming at them.
All right. We're gonna hit our second ad spot here, and we come back on the other side. We are going to talk about then roster constructions and our favorite formats and our favorite quirks and different league protocols and that kind of thing. We'll talk about that on the other side, but first we're going to hear from our good friend Ryan here telling us all about SeatGeek.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan from No Credentials Required to talk to you about one of our newest partners at Belly Up Sports, SeatGeek. Yeah, live sports is great on television, but the feeling of being at the arena is a priceless experience. That's why our friends at SeatGeek are there to help you find the best tickets at the best prices. Not only can you get tickets to sporting events, but you can also get tickets to concerts, comedy shows, musicals, and more. Search for your desired event now at SeatGeek.com, enter promo code BellyUpSports at checkout, and you save $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek. Life's an event. We have the tickets.
All right. Thanks for that. Yep. Hit that promo code. Get over there, SeatGeek, get yourself some tickets, see something. Game,
See
concert,
and do
get yourself
something.
cultured. Get
That's
out
right.
in the world.
Culture
Be out in
is
the
good.
world. All right. So, as we mentioned, Scott Fish Bowl starts this week. And Scott Fish Bowl, for those of you who don't know, this is Scott Fish Bowl 13. It's a giant, the biggest fantasy football, draft extravaganza kind of event. It's all for charity. Wonderful, wonderful program. If you haven't looked into it, look into it. Thousands of players get accepted. Even much more thousands of them have to wait for their turn next year because you only a select few get in. It's like applying to college here, trying to get into Scott Fish Bowl. But they've got, you're going to hear about that. If you're following the fantasy world at all, you're going to hear about that here in the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's going to pop up on your socials. It's going to be talked about on the Sirius XMs and shows like ours and all that. But there are some fun roster constructions and some fun scoring formats here in a Scott Fish Bowl, and we're going to talk about them here. So before I talk about that, I'm going to pop open a Valhalla here from Earthrider, Scotch Ale.
Valhalla, gotta like that.
Yeah, right. And it's a little heavier, so I'm going to have to sip this one before the end of the show here. Or I may disappear from view here. Scott Fish Bowl 13. Okay, so rosters have 22 players on them. You have 1 to 2 quarterbacks, 2 to 6 running backs, 3 to 7 wide receivers, 1 to 5 tight ends, 1 to 4 kickers. Okay. The scoring formats, though, in Scott Fish Bowl are kind of what make it fun here. It's a full PPR format, but it's basically a tight end premium league, where tight ends get 2 points per reception.
Okay.
So now tight ends take a little bit more of a jump up in terms of the guys that are going to get targets on their teams, guys that are going to get catches on their teams, even if they're not necessarily going to be scoring all the time. Not everybody's Travis Kelce, but guys like, obviously Kelce is going to be the leading receiver possibly on his team, if not,
I don't think there's
one of the leading
question
receivers in the
about
whole league.
Right.
But here's where guys like Goddard, Pitts, depending on how Desmond Ridder does down in Atlanta, Kyle Pitts, we've seen be a monster in terms of target share before. That's where those guys can come in really handy because it's 2 points per catch. If your top tight end and your top receiver are both going to get 4 or 5 on your NFL team, if they're both going to get 4 or 5 catches every week, if a tight end getting twice the points for those catches is even more valuable. But here's where it becomes even more of a factor. There are first down bonuses, first down scoring bonuses. I believe it's a full point or more for a rushing or receiving first down. If your quarterback passes for a first down, it's like 1/10 of a point. But there are scoring bonuses for catching, for making first downs. Those bonuses are elevated for your tight end. So now those tight ends who maybe don't score all the time in terms of the red zone, but catch those first downs in between the 20s, now those guys are racking up some points between 2 points per reception and the elevated points for their first downs. This is a true tight end premium format for the Scott Fish Bowl. 6 points for all touchdowns, passing, rushing, receiving, fumble recover. However your guy scores a touchdown, you get 6 points for it, which now elevates the passing quarterbacks that don't necessarily run as much. It helps kind of even and level the playing field between guys like Justin Fields, who are going to run all the time and not necessarily pass for as much, and guys like Joe Burrow, who is going to throw for much more,
Right.
but may
He's
not
gonna
run as
throw
much.
it 558 times or whatever.
Right. Kicking wise, we've talked, and again, we've debated and we'll debate today. Kickers, 3.3 points per extra point. Most of your leagues that have kickers are going to give you 1 point per extra point because that's what the guy scores. Scott Fish Bowl basically gives you points for the yardage of each kick. Since you kick extra points basically from 33 yards away, it's going to be 3.3 points for every.
Yeah. Our
point.
redraft league that I'm in does that, where they give extra points for if you kick a 58-yard field goal, you'll get more points than if you kick the 38-yard field goal.
I'm in several leagues where a field goal up to 40 yards is 3 points, but a 40 to 49 is worth 4, and a 50 plus is worth 5. Scott Fishbowl, it's points per yardage. So if you kick a 42-yard field goal, you get 4.2 points. If you kick a 19-yard field goal, you get 1.9 points. So a field goal isn't an automatic 3. It's how many yards did you kick it away from, which makes some sense in a lot of ways. Obviously, it's harder to kick it from farther away. So the farther you kick it, the more points you can get from it.
All I can say at this point is thank goodness for computers.
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't want to be reading the freaking box score the next day on that. $100 free agent acquisition budget, 3rd round reversal in the draft. If you haven't heard about this, it's a snake draft format, but you run round 1 goes 1 to 12. Round 2 goes 12 to 1. Normal snake draft rules like you and I have always played or have seen 100,000 times before. But then it reverses again at the start of the 3rd round. So rather than going 1, 12, 12, 1, 1, 12 in round 3, it goes back to 12, 1 for round 3. The idea behind that, the rationale behind that is it keeps things evened out by meaning that the guy who gets the very first overall pick doesn't necessarily get to stack his roster.
The pick of the litter at every round.
It's supposed to even things out that way. It is something that makes it interesting. It makes it's a different format than you see in a lot of other places.
But and then obviously to be prepared for before the draft gets started.
Right. If you're drafting first, you're going to be on the turn, but you're not going to be on that first turn. So you're going to have to wait a while. You have to really plan out and think about your second pick, because you're not going to grab that automatic like second round type guy. And then there's no trading in that. So that's the format. And so in honor of the Scott Fishbowl starting this week, and in honor of the idea that they've got a very interesting scoring system and a very interesting roster format, we thought we would debate some of our favorite fantasy football, formats. What's our favorite type of format to play? What's our favorite scoring system? What are our favorite roster constructions here? So I want to talk about real quick about the pros and cons here of some of the different types of formats. So we've talked a lot about Dynasty on this particular program. We've talked a little bit about
what kicked us off right from way in the beginning.
Yeah,
we were a Dynasty.
Time I got here, it was a Dynasty show.
That's right.
So of these 4 formats, of the best ball format, of the redraft format, of the Dynasty format, and of the daily or DFS format, which of those 4 is your personal favorite to play?
My favorite is I was late to the Dynasty, but I like that for a couple of reasons, especially Dynasty Superflex.
Sure.
Because unlike in real football and fantasy, quarterbacks are not, they're not the baby in fantasy. Right. And 1 quarterback leagues, football, their quarterbacks are not, the darlings, because the running backs are or whatever it is. But if you're in a Dynasty Superflex league, quarterbacks move to the very top of the draft in a way that I think they should be, because the entire NFL operates around quarterback.
Possibly the most important position in all of professional sports. Possibly. Debatably.
Possibly, with the exception of goalie.
And you have said that before. I knew that was coming.
So I like that about it. And also Dynasty, it's not, redraft, the season's over. It's over. You put it away, right? Yep. And that's the end of it. You got nothing further to do with it. If you won the league, maybe you get a trophy out of it, whatever. But that's it. But in Dynasty, you're the GM, and then you got to concern yourself with the draft even more than redraft, because you got to do your rookie draft and everything else, and maybe somebody drops a quarterback or during the league, whatever that you like, you can go and get it.
Jump on that. Yep.
Jump on it. So I like that aspect of it, but you have to really pay attention. And that's one of the downsides of Dynasty.
It's a daily you gotta watch.
If you're doing it like redraft, and you're like, okay, season's over, let me put it on the shelf, then you're going to be behind the power curve when things come around. But now, Dynasty Superflex is my favorite.
Okay, now you and I are a little older maybe than some of the others here, but I don't want to date you, but have you ever played have you ever been into like Madden or any of the other video games, the football video games that a lot of people in my generation and after grew up with? Have you ever been into any of those? Madden, like the video games, Madden or NCAA football or
the video games I played are probably really predate anything that we could bring up right
Pong.
Here. Yeah, Pong. All right. Oh, yeah. So I'm not really a video games guy.
Because I think because I played a lot of video games in high school, college. I'm kind of part of the original Madden generation. I think that came up with Madden football, and it came out every year, and it was always who's going to be on the cover, who's going to get cursed this year. But one of the coolest things, one of my favorite, and I think one of a lot of guys' favorite thing, guys, girls, whoever plays, one of the favorite things about it is the idea of that franchise mode where you can keep your team going and you play through a season, and then you go on to the next season, and you have to make the trades, you have to make the re-signings of your players, you have to construct your roster, you have to hire your coach and fire your coach. And in fact, EA Sports came out with a NFL head coach game that was unfortunately kind of riddled with bugs, but it was kind of for that same purpose. Like, hey, if you like just kind of building the franchise and keeping the franchise going, you can do that. And so I think Dynasty appeals to a lot of guys and girls who kind of grew up with that because of some of the things that you just mentioned. You get to keep your team going. You get to keep making it's a year-round thing. It's not a
year-round thing.
It's not a throw it away at the end of the season kind of thing. You have to pay attention to it. So I mean,
the only problem with that is that you got to keep your league together. Obviously.
You've got to keep and you've got to make sure that the league is constructed well.
Nobody moves to Norway or somewhere, the space station or whatever.
And if they can't keep up with it or don't want to keep up with it, then they're out. I am a little late to the Dynasty game too, in terms of my overall. I've been playing fantasy football for a quarter century now, but Dynasty I've only been playing for a couple of years now, and I've actually this off season I'm expanding my Dynasty exposure. Dynasty. But Dynasty is quickly becoming more and more a favorite of mine. My home drafts, my two, what I consider my two home leagues, are still both yearly redraft. One is an auction and a keeper league, which is kind of almost like the best of both worlds.
Right.
We get to keep two guys, and it's auctions, so there's strategy involved there,
which we talked about.
But it's every year. You have to re-up your entire lineup. And then my other home league, my main home league, the one that I started with all these years ago, is a straight draft league. So redraft probably still holds the best place in my heart, but I'm quickly becoming much more a fan of Dynasty. I'm getting into best ball, especially as an analyst here. And since I've done this, best ball, I like as a way to kind of gauge market reactions to things. I like to use it as draft prep. I like to use it as a way to, honestly, for investment purposes. I mean, I can jump in a bunch of different leagues here and try and make some money. DFS wise, I'm very new to that game as well, but I'm intrigued by the strategy of it, and I'm intrigued by the fact that you have to know what's going on in the moment,
In
all
the
the way
moment,
through the
right?
entire
Who hurt
the
their
entire season.
elbow and, whatever else, and, on the way to the stadium.
And if you're looking to make, I mean, listen, very few people can make a living as a professional sports gambler, professional bettor, professional fantasy sports player. But if you're looking to do that, DFS is a good avenue for you to
Unless you
get
live in
into
Texas,
that.
of which course you couldn't do that.
You can you can start out low. There are if you haven't done this, if you haven't been to DraftKings I'll put out there as is the one that I like the best, and it's the one that we've worked with here on Belly Up. But if you haven't been to FanDuel, if you haven't looked into Underdog and some of these other things, if you haven't looked into daily, give it a look. Because you can start small. You don't have to jump into it and spend. You don't have to spend the 50, 60, 3-figure buy-in that you have to pay even for your home league. You can start small with just literally cents, fractions of dollars for wagers, where if when you're learning your craft, learning the game, it's low risk. Now, obviously, gambling and fantasy sports and that can be an addiction, can be a problem. So we don't want to, I want to caution people against that. But DFS, you can get into at a low level, see if it's for you, see if you like it, see if you're successful at it, and move up from there without having to jump off the deep end right away. So anybody who is maybe thinking along those lines, DFS is it's a fun way to, and it's a different thing to play. It's a different way to play. Have you done a lot of DFS yet?
No, because here in Texas, it's illegal. So I have never gotten involved in any of the DraftKings or any of that stuff, simply because, and how Belly Up was doing that thing,
right?
Where with your own Belly Up world, all of us could get involved and all that stuff. But I had to go. I couldn't get involved because it was
because you're
because in Texas. And there was a way to get in, you didn't have to bet or whatever else. But
some states consider DFS online sports gambling. Some states consider DFS fantasy sports. And because fantasy sports has been labeled in most places a game of skill rather than a game of chance, DFS is legal in those states. And so I'm in Wisconsin, and online gambling, I cannot place a wager on the winner of the Kentucky Derby online here. I cannot place an online bet on Mike Trout to homer tonight. I cannot place an online bet for any of that kind of thing, on the Super Bowl, anything. There are only, and in the state of Wisconsin, there are only literally, I think, 2 on-site and their Native American casino on in-person sports books in the entire state. It's just not Wisconsin has them outlawed here.
Around here. 0.
So like
you can't go to Oklahoma and do that. You can't go to Louisiana and do that.
So I can go online and I can do DraftKings DFS, FanDuel DFS all day long. I can play anything that is offered that way. But if it becomes a wager where I'm trying to place a prop bet on Saquon Barkley to go over 85 yards today, I cannot do that here online yet. More and more states are getting that. So you bring up a good point.
More and more are. Texas,
depending on where you're at, you may or may not be able to.
In this particular area, they talked about it, but that's it.
Yep. So yeah, and that makes it difficult, because it is still to this point dependent on your literally your home base. Where are you at? It's expanding all the time. It's not necessarily real close here in Wisconsin to passing or being able to be, to make it to the realm of legality, but we'll see going forward here. But yeah, so I like DFS, but And I'm increasingly I'm enjoying best ball, and Dynasty is quickly becoming a kind of a pet of mine. But I think I still prefer redraft.
And my home league is as yours is a redraft league.
And
we
that's
all
it.
have been doing this for years now, and we all know each other for the most part. There are some other people, my friend Dale that got me into it knows them all. I know a lot of them, but still, like you said before, there's a certain woman in our league. We know full well she's going chief heavy.
Yep.
And that's the kind of thing that you could use to your advantage.
You get to know the people, and we get set in our ways. We're older guys.
Get off my lawn.
We don't really want to necessarily deal with change so much, but I'm increasingly liking Dynasty. But redraft it's my home. It's where I came from. It's what I enjoy the camaraderie. Now you can get
one
the same
thing that I've
Dynasty.
Never done is the tight end premium. Never been involved in that.
I have not done.
I have read about it, and I've seen where people make mistakes. Even it's a tight end heavy, so tight ends go to the first round. Not necessarily the case,
and not just Travis Kelce. Let's talk about some scoring formats.
First round draft pick. I don't care what the format is.
Let's talk about some scoring formats then. Most of the leagues that I play in are PPR, points per reception. So if your catch is worth a point. My home league, when we started out, it was half PPR. So you only got a half a point per reception, which meant that you kind of had to split your focus between running backs that were the Nick Chubbs of the world, who were not going to catch a ton of passes, and the Darren Sproles of the world, who were going to only catch passes for the most part. You had to kind of split your focus between them. But do you prefer standard or do you prefer PPR first off?
I prefer PPR. That's pretty much all I've done. Mm-hmm. And so since I'm so involved with PPR, I can go into a draft and know what the rankings are and things like that. Whereas standard is completely something
You're
different.
so immersed in PPR because it's become so prevalent in the industry that now trying to retro focus into standard is a little different.
It is different. And if you're into standard, that's great. If that's all you've done is standard, it's kind of the same thing I'm talking about, that in PPR, you're used to that sort of thing. But so if you're into standard and you like it, hats off to you.
Good for you, but I will stick to
PPR is what I'm in.
I agree completely. Now, hey, 4 or 6 points for a passing touchdown.
It should, a touchdown is 6 points.
There you go.
Right?
Okay.
Right. So, I talked about computers and all that earlier, but you don't have to make it so incredibly difficult for people to score and try and plan that. Right. So you're looking at he got a touchdown. So you should be able to, that's 6 points plus it was a 10-yard score. So that's another point, whatever it is. You should be able to have a pretty solid idea what the score is going to be on your team.
So we know the game has changed. Not just the fantasy game, but the NFL game has changed as well. The rise of the mobile quarterback has become like a big deal in most scoring formats in fantasy football. The 6-point passing touchdown helps level that playing field between the quote unquote less mobile guys and the guys who run. So now a guy like Lamar Jackson, a guy like Lamar Jackson who's going to run more.
Touchdown pass, it's a touchdown. You should get 6 points out of it. You should get 6 points, a quarterback, and the receiver should get 6 points, which comes back to what we've been talking about, the stacks of best ball. All that ties into it.
Who was the more valuable quarterback to his team? Tom Brady on any team that he won the Super Bowl on, or Jalen Hurts on the Eagles last season? Who was the more valuable quarterback to his team? That's a debate you could have all day long. But two completely opposite ends of the spectrum.
Talk about that.
Two completely opposite ends of the spectrum. My screen isn't wide enough here to show the spectrum.
They got the job done. That's
Tom
all
Brady
important.
could throw for 40 some
He could-
touchdown, 50
that's
some. We
right.
saw it.
Heck, he did it, when he was on Tampa Bay and he was 49 and a half years old, whatever.
Whereas Jalen Hurts is going to be one of the league leaders, period, regardless of position. He's going to be one of the league leaders in rushing touchdowns. Like you said, the ball crosses the line. It doesn't
Nope.
matter who put it there. It
That's
doesn't
right.
matter how it got there. If the ball crosses the line, it's 6 points.
And
So the 6-point passing touchdown really levels that playing field, and it takes away the importance of a guy like Justin Fields, who is not exclusively a runner, but at this point, I think we all would agree that his main value is because he's a runner.
Right, and because
it
he's a
shifts
runner,
that
could
value.
make him more valuable, as we talked about.
It will shift that value
Burrow.
towards guys like Jimmy Garoppolo, who is not necessarily a mobile guy, but we know can throw the football. So yeah, and it creates a great best of both worlds for guys like Josh Allen. I mean, Josh Allen's going to be
Right.
top 4 type quarterback and scoring regardless of format, pretty much, because he does it all. But I think it levels that playing field. It lessens the impact of a guy like a Justin Fields, but it raises the impact of these guys like Matt Ryan when Matt Ryan was at his height, Derek Carr, guys who aren't
Right.
necessarily known for their running ability.
Yeah, I don't know if the word lessons is quite what we're looking for, but it definitely raises these other guys up.
Yeah.
So that,
Rather than
so-
bringing them back to the pack,
Right.
it kind of
So
brings the
we're
rest of the pack
even-
up to them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an even field. Right.
So then along those same kind of lines, then most scoring formats don't necessarily score passing yards at the same as rushing and receiving rates. You'll get a point for
Right,
every
and you
10
can
yards
factor that
rushing
in,
and
and-
receiving, but you get a tenth of a point or a quarter of a point for 10. You need
Right.
more rushing or more passing yards to match that. What do you make of that scoring format, and do you prefer one or the other? Would you prefer to see
Well,
passing yards
that goes back
emphasized or
to-
de-emphasized?
Passing yards, let's say, okay, you throw an 80-yard touchdown. You should get more points than the guy that threw an 8-yard touchdown.
Okay.
That's the kind of way I look
Yeah.
at it.
Yeah.
And in our in a redraft league, that's exactly the way it's set up.
You got
and,
distance. You've got distance escalators for
Distance,
yeah.
and we all
If a guy scores a
you-
40-yard rushing touchdown, he gets a bonus point or
right.
Yeah.
He gets a bonus, and it's not 0.25 or point any of that. Because I am not a math major. I will not
Okay.
be a math major. I will not attempt to be a math major, and so I don't want to sit there and try and figure out what 1.57, 0.2.76, and 0.3,
Yeah.
0.5.
Again,
all
that's
that
what the
stuff,
computer's
What does that
for.
all add out to? I don't know. I don't care to know. But so if a guy throws a 80-yard touchdown and he gets 8 points, I can deal with that.
So do you want a guy to get the same amount of points for having a 200-yard passing game that he would get for having a 200-yard rushing game?
Yes.
Really? Okay. So in your opinion, are you saying that a yard is a yard is a yard, regardless of how you get it, the same way that a touchdown is a touchdown is a touchdown, regardless
Well,
of how you get it?
Pretty much.
Okay.
But like I said, an 80-yard touchdown should be more than an 8-yard touchdown.
And it is, but it's only slightly so much if you're talking about
Right.
passing yardage.
We don't want to get out of.
I'm
so
going
crazy
to
that-
disagree with the idea that a 200-yard passing game should be scored the same as a 200-yard
Well, then,
rushing
you know
game.
what? I want to retract that answer
Okay.
because a 200-yard running game is, one that
Okay.
it might be a run. It might be a record for your league.
Right?
A
And guys
200-yard
get 200-yard,
passing
yeah.
game means that you got sacked 7
A
times.
scrub can come in and get
Right.
200 yards passing.
So,
And that's
so I
my point.
retract that answer. No, I don't agree that
Okay,
they should
there we
not be
go.
the same at
'Cause-
all, because a 200-yard game is
A
major
200-yard receiving
accomplishment
game, a
for a
200-yard
running
rushing
back.
game is a much different
That's
animal than a
right.
200-yard
Okay,
passing
so
game.
yeah, so I'm 180 degree.
I am.
Is
There
that
you
what I
go.
want to do? Is 180 degree?
Yes,
backpack
because
right here?
that's the reverse. If you go
Okay.
360, you're going back in the same direction.
That's right, the same direction. I don't want to do that. So
No, you wanna
I'm
go reverse.
absolutely backtracking my answer 100%. 200-yard passing game will get a guy benched.
Right. 200-yard rushing game might win a guy an award. Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
I agree. It is a much different animal to get a 200-yard rushing or receiving game than a 200-yard passing game. And so for that reason, logically, if you want to be Plato about it here, logically then a yard passing is not worth as much as a yard rushing in terms of the player's effort to get such is what I'm getting at here. Obviously, a yard is a yard. If you need 3 yards for a first down and you get 3, if you get 4 yards rushing or 4 yards passing, and you get the first down, boom. Nobody cares that you got it either way and who did it and how. But from a fantasy scoring standpoint and from an effort standpoint, it is logically not as valuable to have a guy throw for a yard as it is for a guy to run for a yard. It is much more difficult to run for a 10-yard gain than to pass for a 10-yard gain. And so I have no problem with the idea of passing yards being scored at a lower level than rushing yards. I'm okay with the idea that 10 yards is a point for rush and receiving, and 25 yards, say, is a point for passing. I have no problem with that because we just established it. As you count those numbers up, I mean, it's unheard of almost for a guy, college, pros, high school, whatever, a 300-yard rush day or receiving day is an absolute historic top of Sports Center type day.
That's right.
A 300-yard passing game happens
Absolutely.
oftentimes on both sides of the field.
It happens
multiple weeks in a row. Right? It can so for that reason, I don't mind that scoring system.
Yeah.
The touchdown thing, I
if
definitely
you were
like
watching
the idea
earlier
of the 6
and
points.
you heard my answer, please, X that.
Strike
out.
that from the
All right.
record.
Strike
Oh,
that.
all right. There we go. We came to a consensus there.
Okay.
So then the last scoring wise, then the last thing I want to kind of debate here, kicking and defense premiums. Now we kind of brought it up just now with the Scott Fishbowl and how they score kicks. We've debated, and you can debate all day long. Do we want kickers on NFL or on fantasy rosters? Do we not? Do we want defenses? Do we not? I think you and I both agree that they're part of football.
They are. They are a part of football. You just don't act like they don't exist.
They do introduce a level of unpredictability, and in a field where we are always trying to predict, and it is not an exact science. We're freaking forecasting the weather here every week.
That's right.
But in a field where we are trying to make sure, and we're looking at every minute detail to try to predict the future, kickers and defenses are completely and utterly unpredictable.
That's right.
Almost every year without fail, the defense that goes number 1 in your draft is not going to end up as the top scoring defense.
That's right.
We see it all the time from year to year.
Take into account matchups,
which is why
is very important. And it's the same kind of thing in fantasy baseball.
Yeah.
That you have to take in, okay, so this guy is worth this much, but he's facing, let's say, the Texas Rangers, the highest scoring offense of baseball. So maybe
I've got a great pitcher, but he's facing the Rangers, and it's a deadly lineup. Do I really want to start him tonight?
Valuable today as he would have been a week ago when he faced the Oakland A's.
Yes.
It just is.
So would I rather go out and stream the guy who is facing the Kansas City Royals lineup, or do I want to put my stud in even though he's facing Texas, Toronto, whoever?
That's right. That's right. If he's a stud,
and defenses in football are the exact same way.
But we're not talking the same kind of scenario with kickers or defense.
No.
So if let's say, okay, as I mentioned before, I almost said Oakland. You believe that still? The Raiders faced Denver.
Las Vegas, yeah.
In the first game of the season in Denver. that's a defensive game you're probably going to want to have. So go ahead and do that. And, but are the Denver Broncos a defense you're going to want all season long? Probably not.
Not when they're facing they have
Not
to
when
face
they're
Kansas
facing
City
Kansas
twice.
City and
They have to
Kansas
face
City, which
Sandy
will
or
happen,
Los Angeles twice. Yeah, no.
That's right. So
And that's the point.
that's the point.
Yep.
And you don't know about defenses. You can take a guess, like at the first game, 2 games maybe, but after that, you stream your defense. Unless you
And
have
any kicker-
McPherson as their kicker for Cincinnati, you're gonna stream your kicker. So
Tucker for the
Tucker,
for
guys like
Justin
that.
Tucker's almost automatic. He's as close to automatic as you're going to get, but even Justin Tucker doesn't.
That's right. You're still gonna have a bye
Kickers
week.
don't make every kick.
No,
Kickers don't take every kick every week.
right?
They don't
And-
take
and
kicks
their
every week.
Teams take them out of the game. Let's say, okay, instead of going for the kick, we're going for the first down. Happens all the time.
Some teams 4th and 1 at the goal line is an automatic field goal attempt, and that's great. A lot of teams, Baltimore, one of the top rushing teams in the entire league, whether it's their quarterback or their top 3 running backs you're talking about. Crimini's, even Mark Andrews has had rushing attempts for touchdowns. They're tight end. This is the top rushing team in football. 4th and 1 isn't an automatic kick for Justin Tucker.
No,
Justin Tucker is maybe the most automatic kicker in the league. He's the best kicker possibly in the history of the league. And we know he can kick it from my house through the uprights in Baltimore.
that's right. So,
But it's
4th
not a
and
guarantee
1
week
at
to
the
week he's going to get
50
those
is
points.
Probably a better opportunity for Justin Tucker than 4th and 1 at the goal line.
Nobody would argue. I don't think anybody who understands football would argue that Justin Tucker is the best kicker in the league and is probably, I don't think anybody would argue that Justin Tucker is miles ahead of almost any other kicker in the league in terms of his reliability, in terms
That's
of
right.
his skill. Justin Tucker was, as the consensus top overall kicker in football, he was the number 1 kicker in football last season. Do you know how much he was the number 1 kicker in football by last season?
Without looking it up, no, but I can imagine it's pretty.
He had 1 more point than Daniel Carlson of the Las Vegas Raiders.
So I was way off. So yeah, so kickers, kind of like the later tight ends, dime a dozen.
Nick Folk was, in fact, we can go even farther than that down. We'll go Eddie Pinheiro for the Carolina Panthers last season.
Okay.
Eddie Pinheiro played 17 games as the Carolina Panthers kicker. He scored 133 points last season. Justin Tucker scored 160 points. That's a difference of 27 points drawn out over 17 games.
Yep.
That is less than 2 points per game better between the number 1 kicker
That's why
and the
when
guy
I'm
who tied
doing
for number
mock
9,
drafts
but
and I
basically was
see
the number
guys
10
taking
kicker.
kickers in the 10th round, you're like, what the hell?
Exactly. Does anybody think that Justin Tucker is only 1.7? I'm an English major. Does anybody think Justin Tucker is only 1.7 points per game better than Eddie Pinheiro? No. I think we all think Justin Tucker is miles ahead of Eddie Pinheiro in terms of skill and in terms of scoring opportunity. But
I'm sure the Ravens
in
probably think
in the grand scheme of things, the number 1 kicker to the number 10 kicker, and most leagues, a lot of leagues are 10 guys. You're talking about a difference of 1 point fractional points every week.
right. So
So the
same
idea of
argument-
taking, so
that's
are
the
you
same
really
argument we use about Patrick Mahomes and the quarterback you take in the 7th round?
right? So are you really helping yourself by grabbing Justin Tucker in the, like you said, in the 10th round, just because, I can have the top kicker? That's great. That's
No, it's not
wonderful that you got the top kicker,
Okay.
but you could have scored that. You could have taken that 10th round pick on somebody else, and you might have ended up with, this year's Ramondre Stevenson or whatever. You need to keep that in mind. So kicking and defensive premiums, though, start to even that out. I'm in a league where, I'm in a league, like you said, where kicking, we get, it's almost, it's incremental points based on how far away they are. And that's not out of the question, but I'm also in a league where defense gets not most leagues. If they have defense, when they score, they say, okay, yeah, if a defense holds a team to 0 to 100 yards or whatever, they get so many points, and 100 to 300, they get so many points. A lot of them have escalators or de-escalators, as it were.
De-escalators, as defense should be.
Right.
Our league that I'm in has that. And so, and it should, because I've seen it where a team gives up 30 points and winds up with positive fantasy points. Like,
right.
Another team
how
gave up
the hell does that happen?
Points has the same amount of points fantasy-wise because they didn't pile up the sacks or whatever. That makes no sense.
Sacks and turnovers should be scored very well.
Turnovers, all of that, definitely.
But the yardage and the points you give up should
be in there. Even though you didn't recover the fumble, you forced it. And if you forced it, obviously they're not moving the ball forward. So if it was 2nd and 3 when they fumbled,
even a forced fumble even if the offensive recovers it, a forced fumble is a disruption of what was happening.
It should count.
I think that we could, if we're going to continue to, and this is obviously independent IDP. We didn't even talk about independent,
which
defensive
I've not
players.
done, so.
But if you're going to continue to have kickers and defenses in your league, I like the idea of defenses being emphasized more or having their scoring changed so that it's much more. I think you need to look at what makes a defense valuable, and then make sure that is rewarded proportionally.
And that's right. And the same way, because that influenced my answer about the kickers, because in our league, if you kick a 56-yard field goal, you're getting more than 3 points.
And you should.
And
it's a much different animal to kick a 50-some yard field goal than it is to kick one out from 21 yards from the old PAT depth.
For that. So I can guarantee you right now that scoring that you just mentioned for kickers would be way, way out of bounds.
And since we've done that, the NFL themselves moved the extra point back to try to make it a more important play, because it was, you and I grew up with it automatic. They're snapping it from the 3, they're kicking it from 21 yards out or whatever. It's just not that big a deal.
Right.
I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm 44 years old. I can go out right now and kick an old school extra point from that depth. I've done it. I've done it a ton. I wasn't even a kicker when I played football in high school or college. It's not that big a deal to kick one. Now, obviously I didn't have NFL guys run into my face, but from 21, 22 yards out, that kick is not that hard to make. You move that back, even moving it back just the 10, 15 yards. Now it becomes that field goal. Guys don't make every single field goal from 35 yards out.
No.
And they never have.
No.
And so the NFL themselves tried to make that extra point a more consequential part of the game. And we've seen it be a much more consequential part of the game. We've seen many more missed extra points since they moved it back. And so since that kick is more difficult, I have no problem making an extra point from extra point depth worth more from a kicking skill standpoint, the same way we talked about it before with passing and rushing yards. Obviously, 10 yards gained is 10 yards gained, but from a skill standpoint, running for 10 yards yourself is much different than throwing for 10 yards yourself. And so kicking the ball from 33, 35, whatever it roughly is for an extra point, depending on the team, kicking the ball from that depth, even if it's only getting you 1 point, that is a much more difficult kick than a field goal from 19 yards out. And so even though the field goal is getting you 3 points, it's a much more difficult kick to get you that one. I have no problem with that idea, like they do in the fishbowl, about giving you basically the points for the yardage. That 19-yard field goal is a 1.9 yard kick in the Scott Fishbowl, even though it was 3 points for the Titans, 3 points for the Packers, 3 points for whoever.
As long as the computers are involved, I'm all for
As
it.
long as I'm not having to deal with it, I don't have to I don't have to buy the Tuesday edition of the USA Today and put it all together and send an email.
No,
out
I'm the guy that
2
had
in
to
the
take
morning
a free
on
math course in college before I took college algebra, and
Right.
and hated every single second of all that. So no.
So you brought up earlier the idea of super flex versus one or 2 quarterback leagues versus 1 quarterback leagues. There are multiple different ways. Obviously, IDP, you can have defensive players individually rather than as a group. Super flex or 2 quarterback leagues versus a regular flex or a single quarterback league. A lot of leagues have gone to 3 wide receivers as the standard starting lineup, much as 3 wide receivers has become the standard alignment in a lot for a lot of teams in the NFL.
Single backs in the backfield.
Right. A lot of teams, in lieu of maybe doing the 3 wide receivers, have gone to 2 flex positions. So you start a quarterback or 2, you start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, your tight end, and 2 flex rather than 1 flex. There's always the debate, like we just talked about do you want kickers? Do you want defensive? Do you want to take a DST for a team? What is your preferred when you're playing? And I realize you and I both are in multiple different, styles of league, but what is your preferred roster construction when it comes to how many positions or how many players per each position? What do you like personally best? What's Kevin Wilson's favorite?
Well, I would prefer that it would be a 1 quarterback league.
Okay.
But if you're going to value quarterbacks like we should, then the super flex definitely comes into play, because as we talked about just a moment ago, super flex quarterbacks are much more valuable, as they should be. But so I'm willing to accept, the super flex portion of it.
Okay.
And the 2 running backs, I'm down with. The 1 tight end, I'm cool with. If they want to do 2 wide receivers or 3, it really doesn't matter either way. Just let know what the construction is before we get started. And then
either way, you have to know coming into your draft, coming into
Right.
the league, when you sign up, you need to know what it is. But my home leagues are all single quarterback leagues, and I'm fine with that. I'm okay with
the
that.
home league I'm in is a single quarterback league as well.
I like the super flex / 2 quarterback format. It gets more difficult if your league is larger.
That's right.
If you're in a 16 team super flex or 2 quarterback league,
That's right.
that means
You
there's
better
only
take
enough
2
for everybody to
quarterbacks
have
open
2.
the draft. You better.
There's only enough for everybody to have 2. So if
That's
you
right,
now
'cause
have
there are
3
only
starting
30
quarterbacks,
teams.
you've given yourself a leg up.
Right. Or 32.
So I like the idea of that kind of strategy. I like that. And I agree with you. I think that quarterbacks should be important to the fantasy game because they are so important to the on-field product. So I like that. I like the super flex / 2 quarterback format, whichever one it is. Either way, if it's super flex and you're not starting a quarterback in your flex, it better be because you've got the top 3 running backs, or somehow you've got Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Tyreek Hill.
Roster mistake.
If you're not starting a second quarterback in a super flex league,
you did something that
you either did something very wrong or something very, very right. If you're not starting a quarterback in a 2 quarterback,
and I would bet 90% of that time it's wrong.
Right. So I mean, 3 wide receivers. I'm in a league that has 3 wide receivers, but it's also an 8-person league.
Yeah, so, I'm in a league that has 2 wide receivers. I'm in a league that has 3. Like I said, it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference to me. Whichever way it is, that's fine. You just have
you and I have already talked about it today. We've kind of mentioned it today already. We've mentioned in the past. So our take on it, yes, we may be old, but
Get off my lawn.
But we both agree that kickers and defenses are part of
football.
The game. So I am fine having them.
That's right. And I'm in a league that one has defense and kickers and one does not.
Okay, you still hear me here?
I'm hearing you. I don't know. what
Excellent.
in the
I don't know
world.
why you're not seeing me, but you're not seeing me.
The
You're hearing
south
me. Okay.
end zone. Did you remove?
No, I'm not
thyself,
in the
or-
south end zone, but I mean, I'm maybe I'm out in left field with some of my takes here. But real quick here to finish up, then, real quick hitter, without a ton of elaboration here. Do you prefer free agent budget versus blind waivers, or first come first serve? Would you rather bid on waivers? Would you rather first come first serve based on based on whoever gets there, or would you rather it reset every week to order of your standings?
I, as being not a math guy, the free, the budget. I understand why that would be. It increases what you have to think about and your strategy and all that. I would rather be in a straight waiver league.
There you go.
And
Okay.
and so, and I think that yes, the worst team should be up at the top, and should because you're trying to keep things
Sure.
competitive. You're trying to keep everybody involved in your league. However, I think that when the playoffs, in fact, comes, I don't think the teams that are out of the playoffs should be locked
Should be
out.
allowed. I agree with that.
I don't think they should be locked out, but the teams that are in the playoffs should go to the top of that list, right?
Big
Let's
time.
say you've got 4 playoff teams. Whoever's number 4 should have the first pick, etc.
I don't mind a blind waiver reset league. I think first come, first serve. I'm in several leagues where you do waivers that run on like Tuesday or Wednesday, and then for the rest of the week, it's
That's
first
right.
come, first serve,
That's
unless
right.
a guy
That's
is
right.
released.
That's right.
First come, first serve. If it's just first come, first serve all week long, I think that tends to penalize people who have day jobs or or not families, or who have more time to pay attention to this kind of stuff than the guys and girls who cannot be glued to their cell phone all day looking at who just got released, who's on the market, who just, what starting running back is hurt and which backup is available. So I think first come, first serve tends to penalize people who can't necessarily follow it all day long. From a strategy standpoint, I prefer the free agent budget. I like the idea of how you have to decide, do you want to save your ammunition for late in the season, or do you want to spend it early in the year, hoping that you pick up that year's Eli Mitchell, that year's Brock Purdy.
Right.
You have to make that decision early in the year. How much do I bid on a guy and not? So I like that introduces that level of strategy. And then finally, our final question today, before we get to where they can find both of us, what do you prefer for a league size? I am literally in leagues of 8, 10, 12, 14, and 16. What's your preferred league size?
I would say, because I'm in a 10-man league and 12-man, a couple of 12-mans, and I think 12 is probably my favorite. 10, you kind of like that because you got so many possibilities, but as far as trying to figure out what you're going to do, if you got more guys trying to get people, I think 12 is the way I would go.
It's different strategies. If you're in an 8-man or a 10-man league, everybody's roster can be stacked.
That's right. If you're an 8-man, doesn't really matter what kind of waivers you're going to work, because there's going to be players available.
But it does take a different strategy, though, to be successful in that league, because you're always facing somebody with a loaded weapon.
Right. So,
in a 14 and 16 team leagues, especially based on depending on roster construction. If you're in a 16 team league, like I said, if you're in a 16 team super flex 3 wide receiver league, the talent pool runs thin pretty damn quick.
Right. So if you drop somebody to waivers, you better be darn sure that player is
12 is right in the middle. 10 and 12 are very standard. 14 is not so much. 16 is pretty standard, honestly, but 10 and 12 are right in the middle. I think, 12 being right in the middle is a good mix of the two strategies, because you've got teams that will draft well.
And if you're going to be in a league that's got 16, hopefully you're in a league that, because there are leagues that I'm in, especially like in baseball.
Right.
They've stopped playing already.
Right. Yeah. Guys have tapped out.
They've
The
tapped
more
out. And
guys-
so
the
if
more
you've got
people
more
in your
guys,
league,
more guys might tap out. So if
the
you're in a
more
league,
people
like
in
you
your
said,
league, the more important your draft is.
that's
And the
right.
more important it is I feel the more important it is that you monitor, like you just said, waivers, that kind of thing. In an 8 and 10 man league, it's almost like it's a demolition derby. Everybody's out there, and the wrong hit can derail anybody or lift anybody to the top when it's that few. But when you get more people in the league like that, who you can come away with in the draft is because not everybody's team will be stacked. So it's not like that 8 and 10 man league where everybody's got 3 great running backs that they can trot out there. Everybody's got 3 great receivers. Everybody could pick up 2 or 3 quarterbacks. In an 8-man, 2 quarterback league, great. There's enough for everybody to have 3 or 4 quarterbacks.
That's
There's
right.
literally enough for everybody to have 3 or 4 quarterbacks, starters in the league. So you have an option week to week. In a 16-man, 2 quarterback league, there is only enough viable starting quarterbacks every week for everyone to have 2. So anyone who has more than 2 has an advantage. Anyone who has less than 2 is automatically at a disadvantage unless that guy or girl has done a great job of stacking the rest of their roster. All right. So moving on here now, Kevin, we're going to wrap things up for the day. Where can people find you, and what do you got coming up here on Belly Up Fantasy Sports stuff?
All right. So you can always find me at Twitter at Kevin62, WILSEA. And so any comments or concerns or anything, you can always send me those over there. And if you go to the Belly Up Fantasy website, you'll find 2 articles from me this week that I wrote about baseball fantasy all-stars, teams that are on, guys that are on the all-star team, that you can use the fact that they're on the all-star team perhaps to increase the cost if you want to go ahead and sell, because otherwise in fantasy they're not worth a whole lot, but they're on the fantasy or the all-star team. So if you can use that to your advantage, do that. And then I have an article where I look back, because the all-star game is this week. And that's the traditional point where you take a look back at the season. Who is your first half MVP, pitcher of the first half, rookie, disappointment? That's both of those are available on the Belly Up Fantasy website. And of course, tonight, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, Vince and I will be on the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show, where we'll be discussing all-stars and things like that tonight. So you definitely want to get over there and check that out.
It's the break in the baseball season. It's the time to talk about that and take stock of where we are, not just real baseball wise, but fantasy wise as well. I agree with that. You can find me as always, STT Chase FFB on the Twitter machine. So get over there. Let me know how you feel about things. Let me know what you'd like to see, like what you want to talk about. If you got any questions on lineups, on roster construction, draft rankings, whatever, get over there. I respond. I try to respond to everybody, as soon as I can on that. And as always, check out bellyupfantasysports.com for my articles and everybody else's articles over there. Sorry you can't see me. I don't know what happened on there, but I am still here as always.
Well, that's good to know that you're still hanging around.
And we'll be back next week. But thanks for everybody for joining us. Join us back here next same back
that's
time.
Right.
Same
Just
back
like
panel.
to welcome in all of our new viewers. There are out there. And one of them just texted me and said, "Hey, I'm watching." Her name's Katura. So welcome in.
Excellent. Yeah. Hey, come on back. All right. Till next week, everybody.
Let people know that we're here. And
spread the word
when you come.
Until next week, everybody. Slanjava and good luck to you.
Everybody have a great week.